Okay. I'd like to convene the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board here on Wednesday, August 21st. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Alper,
Present.
Commissioner Menz,
Here.
Commissioner Musich,
Present.
Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner Rucker,
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson,
Here.
Vice President Abeni, absent will be is at the BET and will be attending as soon as possible, and President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. As Secretary Ringel said, our Vice President is doing great work at the Board of Estimate and Taxation and will be joining us later. I will take a motion then to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, so please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to the approval of the minutes. If somebody would move the minutes.
I'll move the minutes of August 7th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That action carries as well. Okay, on then to reports of appointees to outside boards, commissions, and committees. Anybody have something to share? Not seeing any lights. I just want to remind commissioners. Excuse me.
Do we have the Tree Advisory Commission?
Yes, I do know that. I just want to remind all commissioners and everything that their appointments to the Citizen Advisory Committee for North Mississippi will be due soon, so please encourage you to do that. And now we are going to have a presentation by the Tree Advisory Commissions, their annual report. Looking forward to it always. So welcome, Philip.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Philip Patyandi, your Sustainable Forestry Coordinator. I'm honored to be introducing our Tree Commission. The Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission was formed 20 years ago by your predecessors back in 2004. The charge of the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission is to advise on the enhancement of the Minneapolis urban forest and its long-term health. Their goals are to coordinate issues related to trees across city jurisdictions, to evaluate issues related to trees, to report annually to the MPRB and to City Council, and to explore new ways to acquire resources that increase support for urban forest establishment and management. You may recall from previous years, Peggy Booth, the former chair, one of the former co-chairs of the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission. She served the commission for 18 years. We celebrated her at an Arbor Day event, and then she handed off the planting shovel to new leadership. And so here we have today Giuseppe Marari. He's a citizen member from North Minneapolis, serves to represent District 2, and has been on the commission for 5 years. In his role as a relatively new co-chair, he's here today to present the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission's annual report. So please join me in warmly welcoming Giuseppe Marari.
Welcome, Giuseppe. Yay. Drum roll.
Wow, that was a much better introduction than I could have done. Thank you, Philip. As you said, I'm Giuseppe Marari, and I appreciate the time that you guys are allowing us to present our annual report. And so without further ado, I guess I'll get started. And you guys can hear me okay, or should I bring this closer?
Good idea. Thank you.
Perfect. Philip also did a better job explaining the role of MTAC, so I won't go through that again. I'll just show you a pretty picture of our group in front of the tree staging lot. And so yeah, and then I guess I'll get into the agenda in 4 parts. So we're going to talk about, why are we here? Why do trees matter? We're going to talk about some of the accomplishments in the past year, and then we're going to get into some of the challenges and trials and tribulations that we're seeing out there. And then we'll also talk about some of the recommendations that we want to present to the group. So, why are we here? Why do trees matter? We'll get into a little bit more detail. This is the intro slide. So, again, trees, they mitigate the effects of climate change. They do deliver socioeconomic benefits, and they do create a healthier environment for our citizens. What do I mean by mitigating the effects of climate change? So our tree canopy is the biggest infrastructure that the MPRB has responsibility for in mitigating climate change. So this dense tree canopy that we talk about, that we want to have, the tree canopy itself is a way for us to fight against the effects of heat islands that urban areas usually experience. You have more shade, you have evapotranspiration, you cool the area, and you fight climate change by doing that. Trees, the urban canopy contributes to a very, very large ecosystem. We have critters, we have birds, we have bees, we have a lot of animals that depend on the urban canopy. And then trees underground, they have a big root system and they absorb water, they prevent erosion, and they take the water that usually goes into the storm system and they do something good with it. Trees also deliver a lot of socioeconomic benefits. People want to visit cities with trees. I don't know if you ever fly into Minneapolis or you ever fly into any other city. I'm pretty proud of flying into Minneapolis. It's very green, it's very lush. It attracts visitors, it attracts residents, it attracts businesses. And a healthy canopy, it does increase property values, and there's a lot of correlation between the desirability of a neighborhood and the tree canopy. And then probably one of the most important things is that it does contribute to the health of the people in the city. Trees are big filters. They filter the air, they buffer noise, and I know trees don't give us free Wi-Fi, but they do give us oxygen, and I think that's probably one of the more important things that we need in life. Trees also provide a calming effect. They improve mental health, and I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in a park, I'm usually sitting under a shade tree. I don't prefer sitting on hot, dry grass and sitting under, unless you're suntanning, I don't know about that, but I'd rather get some shade. So, what are some of the accomplishments from the past year? For the most part, the state of the urban forest is good. Private property tree planting is increasing, and valuable trees have been saved. And what do I mean by that? In 2024, we planted 9,600 trees. Of those 9,600 trees, we've increased diversity of those trees. We've learned a couple valuable lessons over time with Dutch elm, emerald ash borer. You don't want to plant all of one tree. So we've increased diversity, and we continue to do so. In last year's drought, I know we're not experiencing a drought this year, but there were 90,000 tree waterings. So I think that's very commendable. And there was also $100,000 generated through the city's carbon credit offset program. Private property owners are getting help. We have emerald ash borer that is still a big deal for private property owners, and they're dealing with a lot of costs. And NPRB and the city has raised over $8.5 million to help deal with the cost of tree removal for those condemned trees. We've also extended the assessment for the payment period from 5-10 years to 20 years. So that's helped property owners. And then the City Trees program has distributed a good amount of trees. A lot of them have been in residential areas. A lot of them have been in green zones being areas that need more trees. And then we've also seen commercial property managers take advantage of the City Trees program. So all of that's good stuff. And then we're kind of excited about this. The Forestry Preservation Coordinator has been doing great work. Whenever we have a large project go through, the Forestry Preservation Coordinator goes through, evaluates the impact to the trees in an area, and makes recommendations to mitigate the loss of trees. Hey, move a tree, keep this tree here, move that improvement there, or if you have to take this tree out, you should plant this many trees in replacement. All of that's good stuff. Now let's talk about the bad stuff. Let's talk about some of the challenges and threats. The big one, we find that there's insufficient funding for the annual tree purchase. We'll get into that. The canopy that the park board manages is under threat. and the canopy that private citizens manage is also under threat, and so we'll talk about that. What do I mean by the tree purchase budget is not permanent? So MPRB has a goal of planting 2 trees per 1 tree removed by 2026. In order to do that, you need to plant 10,000 trees a year. To get those 10,000 trees, you need to have $1 million. It's $1 million to purchase 10,000 trees. We have the resources, we have the capital equipment, we have the people. We need $1 million a year to plant those trees. Up until recently, we had ARPA funds to offset the $500,000 gap in the general fund to pay for these trees, and that is going to be ending this year. So we're short $500,000. You still want to plant 10,000 trees. So there's an issue. And then we got to talk about the canopy that you guys do manage. It's under threat. So we have these beautiful parks. I love going to the parks. I love walking under trees. We love using these parks. We compress the soil around these trees. So the more you enjoy the parks, the more you compress the soil. The more you compress the soil, the more the trees suffer. So we'll talk about some of the recommendations on how to mitigate that. We have 1,200 acres of natural forest that is managed by the park board. There's a lot of invasive species and pests that end up running through those areas. So we want to recognize that that is an issue. We also recognize, it should go without saying, climate change does threaten the vitality of the entire ecosystem. And one of the big ones is there's external agencies that are removing trees without consultation. And I guess this is the example that we want to show, 48th in Chicago. We have this, it's a nice shady area, trees everywhere, and then Metro Transit comes in. And I'm on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Metro Transit for the Blue Line. I love public transit, we need it, I think it's great for infrastructure, but where'd that tree go? Why'd you guys have to remove it? I know that there's a lot of ways to preserve the trees, and we need to talk about that. So it's just weird to me that you see a park bench there sitting under the edge of a tree that's not going to get shade when they put a bunch of transformers in the place of a tree. So again, we want to bring that forward and talk about it. And then finally, the private urban forest is challenged. They're dealing with the same climate change, they're dealing with pests, they're dealing with all of that, but they also have to pay for it. And they're facing situations where trees have to be taken down for safety, for the vitality of the urban forest, but they have to pay for it. And they're getting frustrated. And they're getting frustrated at the lack of communication, the unclear instructions, and so we want to bring that forward, we want to talk about that. So they get frustrated, it's a big financial burden, and then they don't want to plant trees. Because what's going to happen if I plant a tree and it becomes a burden again? So how do we fix that? So we have a couple recommendations. They're pretty blunt. We want to fund the urban canopy. We want to protect the urban canopy through policy. And we want to expand that urban canopy along with the private citizens. So what do we mean by all that? So we want to fund the urban forest. If you really want to plant 10,000 trees, we got to fill that gap. I don't know, to be frank, I'd rather Philip and the forestry department worry about what kind of trees to plant instead of, hey, how do we get the money? So if you want to plant 10,000 trees a year, we need to make sure that there's funding for 10,000 trees. Now, we've done a really good job doing that for the past, decade? But if we don't address that gap, the forestry department's going to be struggling to figure out how do we get the extra 5,000 trees in. Plain and simple. The other thing we're thinking about is incorporating some sort of soil decompaction line item to park event fees. If you have a big park event, You know, you're using the resources, you're enjoying the trees, we should be nice to the trees that we're enjoying. Let's incorporate a line item that can offset some of the pain that the trees suffer, I don't know. But let's be nice to the trees. Also, we want to support requests for additional resources for tree watering. I know it's not really on anyone's mind this year without the drought, but historically we've had a lot of droughts, and we need to be mindful that trees suffer. You know, you can have a few years of drought and trees will take a few years to decline, so we got to keep the trees watered. And then we need to protect the urban forest with policies. We need to talk to MnDOT, we need to talk to Metro Transit, we need to talk to Hennepin County. If we want to build infrastructure in the city, part of the infrastructure is the trees. We can't just remove an infrastructure to add another one. We need to incorporate that. We need to enlist and encourage park keepers in watering trees, and we need to define MPRB's role in supporting a healthy ecosystem. Not just our boulevards, not just our parks, but also the natural areas. And I think all three areas need to be recognized equally. And then we need to grow the private urban forest. We need to keep working on pursuing outside resources for disease tree removal. We need to help the citizens understand what it means to remove trees and help them deal with the cost of removing those trees. MTAC was tasked with coming up with a subcommittee to address the concerns for communication with EAB removal on private property. EAB tree infested removal on private property. And so we came up with a subcommittee. We recommend that you standardize the forestry's communication with property owners and residents with diseased trees. And we have an addendum that we'll add to this report that is from the subcommittee on recommendations on better communication for future infestations and current EAB issues. And finally, we do want to expand outreach to landlords. We want to expand outreach to public housing sites and businesses to encourage tree plantings. Public trees are important, but the private canopy is just as big, if not as important as the MPRB managed canopy. So, in conclusion, really, we want to fund the urban canopy, we want to protect the urban canopy, and we want to expand it. So, I don't know if there's any questions, but feel free. I appreciate the time. Thank you again.
Thank you, Giuseppe, I love it. And I just also want to acknowledge our other founder of the Tree Advisory Committee is here, Don Willicke. Thank you for being here, Don. Commissioners, any questions to our wonderful presenter? I really appreciate your work. Okay, Commissioner Menz?
Yeah, I'd just like to commend this group. I mean, this group took on some tasks this year that were really challenging, and Giuseppe was a really great leader through that, taking on that role. Also, Carol Sursland, who's not here, really stepped up with some subcommittee work that this board authorized around EAB communication. And also, Philip out there, some of those recommendations that were made during some meetings were already taken into account. So I really think that the group did some solid work around helping advise us, our staff, and the community around communication. And I think that moving into next year, there's a lot of opportunity for this group, and there's a lot of knowledge within this group to help advise us on things related to trees and to tree policy that we can tap. And really, really had a great time being a part of this group this year and seeing the leadership. Also, we got to see the last of our former director of forestry, Ralph Sievert, who had a very, very big influence on this group over the years. And I think that one of his legacies will be the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission. So thanks a lot for your work, but thanks a lot. And President Forney, thank you for nominating me to this committee. I really enjoy being on this committee and working for the trees in Minneapolis.
Great. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I appreciate you bringing to our attention a couple of things that we need to work on as we start thinking about our budget for next year. I was already aware of the the gap in funding, but noting that we do need to be thinking more aggressively about how we mitigate the impacts of big events is an important thing to take into consideration and does sound very achievable. So staff, look forward to hearing from me on that one. You had mentioned also that the city as a whole, both the park board and the city council, need to find ways to help private property owners embrace replacement tree planting.
Yep.
And you didn't get into too much detail there. Is there anything additional that you can share with us around that, around what role we can be playing or what role we should be encouraging the city to be playing in that regard?
I think there needs to be more outreach in education on the benefits of trees and the cost-benefit analysis of putting trees in. I think a lot of people that are struggling to make ends meet cannot even fathom putting a tree in. They have to water it, they have to trim it, they have to take care of it. But there's also benefits to them. They get a shade tree. They get to save energy. If they plant the tree in the south side, they get to save energy in cooling, and they get to, if they have a deciduous tree, they get to have heating in the winter. And there needs to be more education on just the benefits of trees and why trees are important and where they're going to, essentially, it's not that difficult to take care of a tree if you plant the right tree for the area, and if you take care of the tree in the beginning, it becomes much easier to have a beautiful shade tree long term. So I think more outreach for that and just more trees, more better. I don't know.
Okay.
So
Well, now I know what I'll be talking with my council members about next time I meet with them, when we talk through what they can be doing to help with this effort. So I appreciate you taking the time to explain that to us.
yep.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes, I really appreciated the slide about 48th and Chicago. And really the need for the Tree Advisory Committee and us as commissioners to begin to network with some of our, public infrastructure partners to really better prioritize trees earlier in the design process.
Yep.
We've run into that in my district on Hennepin Avenue where they just weren't considered until later down the road.
Yep.
And I, as a commissioner, from a policy standpoint, would support charging for these public infrastructure projects of the trees that they have to take down.
Yes.
So I know that, there's always a replacement, which is positive, right? If they take a tree, they're going to replace it. But there is a carbon value to that older tree that we can never then utilize for another 20 years. And you know how often projects can come along. It's about that same time frame.
Right.
So I would support, as a commissioner, thinking about, is there a way we can begin to, not only analyze those trees' value, which we have done for Hennepin Avenue. We really worked hard to prioritize which of these 200 trees can we save and which are the highest priority.
Right.
And we were able to save about half of those. So I really think this is something we can continue to dialogue and that you guys could do some more research on, possibly for us.
Yeah.
But that's interesting to me. And then secondly, I just wanted to say that is there anything that we can do? I know there was a lot of storm impact. Maybe this is a forestry question for Philip. But our local newspaper was doing an article about the 300 storm-related losses that we had of trees this season so far. Both, I think it was 250 on the boulevard and 50 in the parks. Is there anything that we're doing storm-related? I mean, is pruning more of an issue? I mean, why are we, was it just a bad season? After 3 years of drought, we had these old oaks with spread-out root systems that just tipped over. But maybe you could just give a little, just an overview of what happened this season, if there's anything we can do to reduce those storm-related losses.
Yeah, Commissioners, thank you for the question. The storm losses, unfortunately, I think some we can work toward to mitigate. I think some are an inevitable part of managing trees in an urban forest. A lot of the tree failures we saw were were full stem failures at the base. It was a period of time where we had a lot of rain and then a wind event that it was in some areas very focused and some, so we had just certain parts of Minneapolis that had an amazing amount of wind that the trees just couldn't handle. So I think we need to always continue to prune trees to maintain them, but that wouldn't have helped with some of the failures that we saw from the storm. And so I think that's just part of the urban forest. Some of the cleanup work is, pruning, removing limbs that have broken and things like that. All these, we will be replacing the trees, but we did. I think if we did not have the previous work that our tree preservation coordinator is doing from one of the previous storms we learned about, where we learned that trees were twice as likely to fail in a storm after sidewalk reconstruction had happened. Wow. The number of losses we saw this time around in this year was nothing compared to what we've seen, what our urban forest has seen previously. And because our colleagues, we're all working together, the city and the park board, to not remove roots when we're replacing infrastructure. And if too many roots need to be removed because of changes to infrastructure, we know we're removing those trees. As a result, we lose them. But I think that preservation work has been really important to not have that number push even further.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Thompson first.
Thank you, President Forney. First of all, just thank you for putting all of this together. I also really appreciate highlighting the need for clear collaboration when we have different partners. And that's actually what I was wanting to suggest, if I can make a suggestion, because it seems like you guys are more experts than, at least, than I am sitting here, of potentially coming up with ways that we could have guiding principles. As I sit on the planning commission with the city and with all these interagencies,
Sure.
and I see that some things are standardized in boxes that are checked for development or whatever it happens to be, and other things are not standardized. And it would be really, I think, helpful to have how do we see this in our urban canopy? And of course, being on the north side, I was writing down the dates. We had 2011, I think it was the tornado,
May
in
of 2011.
Yeah.
Hit my house.
Yeah. Oh, see.
Lost 12 trees.
And here's, I said this at the time, because you mentioned South Minneapolis. We haven't replaced a lot of the trees.
Correct.
It never happened. And then I call it a monsoon, was in 2013, which was like a tornado, but it was worse, and it was ripping up, I think it was, and a lot of those trees they just were gone. They haven't been replaced. And so I think that has impacted north, just specifically within the city. But I think that sometimes when we do projects, we never get them back. So I really appreciate you highlighting that, because that's something that I've seen as problematic, and you don't always know how to solve the problems. And so it helps when people give direction in that way. So thank you so much for your time.
And
sorry for your house. and
No,
the tree.
If I can respond, Commissioner
Yeah, please.
Thompson, thank you for that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Philip, but I believe the boulevard trees were all replaced.
Sorry.
The North
I
Minneapolis-
sometimes don't read my own notes. The residential ones.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
what I want to highlight, is that people in North Minneapolis were more worried about getting a roof back on their heads.
Yep.
Like I said, they can't fathom adding a tree to their list of things to worry about. And that's the
I
thing.
appreciate you saying that. That was I didn't follow my own notes.
No. But the mentality of it's a thing to worry about instead of a asset for their home,
Yep.
that's where we need to shift the conversation.
Yep.
So you can still see the North Minneapolis, the scar that goes through North Minneapolis through the aerial view, and it'll take years to recover if people plant trees.
Yep. I totally agree. So if you guys, I'm not, I could tell Commissioner Mentz this too, but if you guys think about okay, how could we, how could an agency do that? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menz, if you can be very brief, we've got
Yep,
open
I see
time.
the time.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. So just really quick to respond to Commissioner Misich, there has been really solid collaboration on the city. I really want to commend Sydney Schraff, who has been serving on this committee. She reports every week. The city has been really great partners, it seems like, on this commission. And there's also some education happening with youth that's going to be presenting at the group next week. I also think that one thing that the group has discussed is around, real estate disclosures, the education on the front end for property owners. There's all kinds of things like that. So I think this commission has done a really excellent job, and we can tap them in the future.
Yeah, we'll be happy to continue the work. So
Thank you,
again.
Giuseppe. So much appreciate your report. Thank you both also for being here. And so I'm going to move into open time. Now I'm going to read the open time moves. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people only on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with the time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others here to speak and to stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. Two types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals are pending litigation and personnel issues. Please refrain from commenting on these specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. The board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. After that long soliloquy, we have only one person, and so if you want to have 15 minutes, but I'll limit you to 3. No, Mary, I believe it's Marion. Oh, I'm sorry, Wells. Oh, Renz. Sorry.
Wells. I live at 1705 Stevens Avenue in the Stevens Square neighborhood. I've been here before. Thank you for letting me come again. We were delighted a few months ago when we got our park funding moved back to 2026 for Stevens Square. And now knowing that there's an intention to move it back to 2027 has been really discouraging for our neighborhoods and the others who have to wait for their parks to get some work done. It's another year. We can hardly walk on our paths. I do a lot of work in the neighborhood. I do a lot of events, and I can barely walk on our paths. There's no money to fix those. That's part of it. Whatever we've had done has been tax increment financing. Our benches are leaning. There's even the lovely fountain we got from the tax increment financing money, I believe. We still need work done on that around the edges of it. It's the only green space in Stevens Square. And to continue to wait is really discouraging for the neighborhood. So I don't know where all the money's coming from for the $10 million for North Commons. Everyone deserves a good park. But I feel like I hope people would look at some other ways so that Loring, Stevens, Elliott, all the parks that are being asked to wait won't have to wait so long. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, not having anybody else, then we'll close the open time. And I believe that we are finished with the report. Thank you so much for being here and everything. And so I am going to go and ask for a motion to move the consent agenda.
I'd like to move the consent agenda as a slate with the exception of Resolution 2024-167, which I would like to pull for discussion. Can I get a?
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Then we will move on then to Resolution 2024-167.
Or do I get to read it?
If somebody would like
Yeah,
to move that resolution, I'd really
I
appreciate.
will move it and read it. I would like to move Resolution 2024-167, and I have the honor of reading this whole thing. And I'm gonna.
What-
I'm going to second that,
Oh, sorry, second.
just so that
Yes.
we don't forget later.
Thank you,
Please.
right,
Would someone
okay.
like to second that?
So, yes,
Okay.
we have somebody we wish to honor tonight.
I'm going to pronounce this Lopit through the duration, just in honor of Claire, because we all know I don't pronounce it that way. Okay, resolution recognizing and honoring Claire Wilson for work as Executive Director of the Lopet Foundation. Whereas Claire Wilson, graduate of Bowdoin College, really trying, is an energetic leader driven to create healthy and equitable communities. Whereas Claire Wilson has served many roles, including Deputy Commissioner for Policy with Minnesota Department of Human Services, Executive Director for Minnesota Association of Community Mental Health Programs, Voter Outreach Director, and the Loft Literary Center employee. Whereas Claire Wilson is quick to share that her favorite job was camp counselor and the skills it taught her: curiosity, joy, authentic and compassionate listening, enthusiastic engagement, and the buddy system. Whereas Claire Wilson joined the Lopet Foundation as its executive director on December 16th, 2020. Whereas Claire Wilson's enthusiasm for the work of the Lopet Foundation dates back to the early years of the Lopet Foundation, when she became the first paid employee of a newly forming foundation that set its eyes on creating an urban marathon-length cross-country ski race that would showcase the Minneapolis Park and Recreation System. Whereas Claire Wilson started her position in the midst of COVID, economic uncertainty, and staff transition, and with her enthusiasm and joy, ensured the Lopet Foundation emerged solid and strong. Whereas Claire Wilson created a welcoming space at Theodore Wirth Regional Park by being intentionally welcoming and seeking to break down barriers for everyone to be able to access the gifts of the park. Whereas Claire Wilson has demonstrated a strong focus on protecting and enhancing the natural areas of Theodore Wirth Regional Park. Whereas Claire Wilson, by investing in Community First and partnership with Share Winter Foundation to provide free admission, brought the world to Wirth for the 2024 COOP Cross Country World Cup. And whereas for one snow-filled weekend in February, over 40,000 spectators cheered on the best racers in the world because we, the community, made it happen with Claire Wilson's vision of an event based on love by community as our guide. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board extend the deepest gratitude to Claire Wilson for all of the work that she has done to build community in Minneapolis, and especially her work with the Lopet Foundation, and wishes her well in all future endeavors. And resolved, the President and Secretary have this resolution enrolled and presented to Ms. Wilson at an appropriate event.
Yay.
Yay. Any comments people would like to share? Yes, Commissioner Thompson.
I mean, I had the honor of reading this, but this is actually what I would have written about Claire myself. So it's been an honor and a privilege, and I will miss you. It will never be the same on the north side, and you are welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say a few words. Claire, you have brought such joy, seriously, to the Lopet. You're there, I know you are. Anyway, if you'd like to come forward, we'd love to have you. Anyway. Like I say, your joy has absolutely radiated. My only fear is that, our lack of snow maybe last winter might have been because there was such warmth that you generate. Anyway, but you pulled off the most amazing event that, this community has ever experienced, and we are so grateful for it. Eyes were on Minneapolis, and we thank you for that. And we will miss you. There's going to be a huge, huge gap, over there. But as Commissioner Thompson says, you're welcome back anytime, and come back and play with us. So with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That action carries. Thank you so much. Bravo. All right, with that, We will then move to the Planning Committee.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I will move Resolution 2024-143, resolution approving temporary occupancy under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 for a City of Minneapolis Bridge reconstruction project adjacent to and within the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board property known as the CPRO site.
Second.
Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, see now. Is this in need of a roll call? Is this in need of a roll call? Council Rice?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're going to need a roll call then. Secretary Ringel, if you call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Vice President DeBenny. Absent President Forney.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
That action carries. On to our next resolution.
Also on behalf of the Planning Committee, I will move Resolution 2024-148, resolution approving temporary occupancy under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 for the Minnesota Department of Transportation's rehabilitation of Trunk Highway 55, which will utilize the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's Loose Line Regional Trail.
Second.
Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing any lights. I'll ask the secretary to call a roll on this one as well.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Vice President DeBenny. Absent President Forney.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
That action carries. On to our next resolution.
I will also move Resolution 2024-150, resolution approving Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's intent to purchase land from the City of Minneapolis at 1920 Aldrich Avenue South in the Lowry Hill East neighborhood for the creation of a park.
Any questions on this action? Yes.
I'll just make a quick comment.
It needs
Commissioner
a
Schaefer.
second.
Excuse me?
It needs a second before there's a discussion.
Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, now Commissioner Schaefer.
I just want to say the community is super excited about this. It's been I heard about this from the beginning of my term. I've had many meetings about it with the LH Lena board, and I know it was even a discussion before my time. So for this neighborhood that really has a deficiency in park space, this is really, everybody's really excited about it. So I just want to say thank you to the staff who have worked hard in seeing this happen.
Any other questions? Not seeing any other lights. We'll have to do a roll call on this one as well. Secretary, please.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Vice President DeBenny. Absent President Forney.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
That action carries. On to our next resolution.
One last from the Planning Committee, I will move Resolution 2024-154, resolution approving a coordination agreement and statutory partnership agreement between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and Owamni Ohodiapi?
Close. Very good.
Close, thank you. Related to land surrounding and adjacent to the Upper St. Anthony Falls Lock and Dam, including Waterworks Phase 2, a part of the Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park.
Any questions? Any questions? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by
We still
saying
need a
aye.
second. Point of order, we need a second, and I will
Oh, sorry.
second that.
We do have a second? Okay. Then, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On then to Administration and Finance Committee.
All right, on behalf of Admin and Finance, I will move Resolution 2024-144, resolution amending the 2026 through 2029 Capital Improvement Program CIP years to reallocate $10,341,000 within the Neighborhood Capital Developed Parks and Neighborhood Capital Undeveloped Parks section of the 2026 CIP to North Commons Park Plan implementation and to delay by 1 year all projects within those two CIP sections in the 2026 through 2029 CIP years.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I see a light. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. Back in 2015 and 2016, I spent a lot of time out in community talking about the MPP 20 program and why it was so important. And when I voted to support the 20-year Neighborhood Parks program in 2016, I promised my constituents and my colleagues at the City Council that this investment in our neighborhood parks would be done based on a data-driven, criteria-based system to help address racial and economic equity, and that the park board would provide our communities with updated amenities to replace those that are well past their useful lives or were rendered unusable because of deferred maintenance. MPP 20 was not a windfall for the board to build bold projects that would take tens of millions of dollars to achieve, but instead it would keep kids across the city swinging and splashing. It would provide walkers and runners with sidewalks that were not crumbling, and athletic teams with courts and fields that were more than weeds and hard-packed dirt. When this board voted to approve the plan for North Commons, we acknowledged the draft plan could not be implemented without significant outside funding from the philanthropic community and from the state. Unfortunately, those funding sources did not pan out to the levels needed, and we cannot afford what's been proposed without shortchanging neighborhoods across the city by an entire year's worth of investments midway through the neighborhood park program, when we have yet to even invest once in each one of those neighborhood parks. I believe that moving forward with this proposal endangers our future years' funding in this program, particularly in light of the financial difficulties projected over the next few years in both our budget and the budget at the city. And I believe it will damage our ability to request an extension of the program, as we are not following through with what we promised back in 2016. I will not be voting in support of this resolution.
Commissioner Alpert.
Yes, thank you. I know I was absent last time, but I did watch the video and appreciated the presentation as well as the questions and comments. I have a couple questions before my comments. I still don't have clarity on what happens to parks that are in the outer years, because this is a 20-year park plan. And so what happens to the parks in year, as everything is pushed out 1 year, do they just fall off the cliff, essentially?
President Forney, Commissioner Alpert, as currently projected, the 20-year neighborhood park plan was going to be moving into a second round of funding for the parks at the highest level of the equity metrics. And we were estimating that there were going to be 2.5 years of second allocations for those neighborhood parks. With this resolution, if approved by the board, we would still have second allocations. Every neighborhood park would get an allocation within the NPP 20 within the 20 years, and a few less parks would get a second allocation.
Okay, so the second allocation would not be, amounts would not be redistributed to give every park a second allocation. They would just, the ones that are at the end get cut off, correct, from the second allocation?
President Forney, Commissioner Alpert, I don't know if staff have a very solid answer to that. I know that we would be getting through every single park, and then it would be Ad Director Arvidsson who would be creating the CIP, which would look at what we would do in those last 1.5 to 2.5 years. I don't know if you have anything to clarify to that. I don't believe the plan would be to take the last 1.5 and divide that up amongst all the parks. Then every park would get $20-some thousand. It might not be capable of completing a capital project with that money.
President Forney, Commissioner Alpert, Mr. Elias described correctly how we're working through the NBP 20 now, which is that we have generally standardized funding amounts, and based on those, there would be, every park will see an investment during the 20 years of NPP 20, and then those outmost years of NPP 20, so 2035, 2036, we would start over again and select projects based on the equity metrics to have a second investment. With this action, there would be fewer parks that would get that second investment.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any guarantees, back to the project, back to the $10 million reallocation from the CIP, are there any guarantees that we have enough funding after this reallocation? Or could we come up with, additional money that we're short and then need to come back to the board essentially and, we need another 2 million. We need another 5 million.
President Forney, Commissioner Alper, I think in the presentation I made 2 weeks ago, I noted that even with this allocation, there's still a budget shortfall and that we're going to be looking to both the federal government and a potential allocation through Senator Klobuchar's office, as well as additional state resources to make up that shortfall. We also have the Parks Foundation all in on this project to help us get over the line and to continue to push this project forward. I'm not going to stand here today and give you a guarantee of any kind. I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Appreciate that. So just to speak a bit to this, so thank you for those comments. I think this is a pretty dramatic action before us tonight. And while I believe in doing big and bold things, I think it's important to do them with calculated risk, to take that on carefully. And I am concerned about this. I mean, I do believe this is a landmark project, and I know that was brought up at the presentation a couple weeks ago, but at what point do we define a landmark project? Is it 20 million? Is it 30 million? Is it 45 million? Is it 100 million? I mean, I believe firmly that a $35 million project is a landmark project. And I don't think it's two things. First of all, we made a promise with NPP 20, and I think we need to keep it. So that's where I'm coming from. And where are my notes? And I think that's the biggest thing driving my decision tonight to not vote in support of this resolution.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President Forney. Can I ask Director Arvidsson or Mr. Elias to talk a little bit more? I know we talked about it 2 weeks ago, but just how our current planning, like our staffing impacts how parks are being rolled out anyway. I know there's the budget question, right? But there's also the timing question. Is there, for these parks that are being delayed, like as people have, they're being delayed, I put that in air quotes because the funding is being delayed, but the service level may not be. Is that correct?
President Forney, Commissioner Thompson, I think in the presentation 2 weeks ago, tried to demonstrate that there are, I believe, 11 or 12 neighborhood park projects with funding from previous years that have yet to have a project manager assigned. We believe that, staff have believed that we can begin 2027 projects in 2026 as we have staff available. We have registered landscape architects on our staff that can begin pre-design, community engagement, and initial design phases with limited financial resources to kickstart 2027 projects in 2026. And also wanted to note that many projects are not initiated in the year of their allocation currently based on staffing levels.
Thank you. Per MPP 20 itself, the money side, so timing is kind of fixed. The money side, do we see a potential, and this is a real open question for anyone who can answer it, potential for funding more long-term with this. I honestly don't even know the details of how this will impact, as Commissioner Alper was stating, those that kind of won't get touched twice, or how it'll, we haven't looked into continuing the funding stream, have we yet? It's like a cross-swept bridge when we get there? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I will say, I will just say this to my colleagues. This project was not voted on by this board. And I would really caution, I've had conversations with a few of you about this idea of the dream big that we have said in our master planning process. And I believe that we need to really look at implications of that idea, because I think it's fair to say that none of us, like, we weren't there when the plan was put forward, right? Ideologically, this is very challenging for me as a person, because I completely agree with Commissioner Musich and Commissioner Alper's comments. I made a personal vow to see this through, and I know that this is where we are now. And obviously, maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but I will support this, even as it is challenging to my financial sensibilities and to the promises that we did make to the larger city. And I think that this just speaks again toward what Commissioner Alper was saying, that our entire system was built on smaller neighborhood parks with a few tentpole places, right? A few that I'm thinking of course, are like the Lake Harriet Bandshell. And a lot of those have been subsumed into regional parks, of which this is not. If I can just have 10 more seconds. And so that is challenging. How do we bring in something new to a system that we haven't earmarked as regional? I don't know. But I will say, as the District 2 Commissioner, this is the door. This is, as far as I can tell, the only door. And so I will ask my colleagues to support this for the north side, but I respect their decisions if they feel like they can't. Thank you.
Commissioner Menz?
Thank you for letting me speak. I'd like to know, so maybe Council Rice can help with this. So where are we breaking promises that we made during MPP 20 by developing this plan? I would assume that staff have thought that through. So is there any advisement around the legality of how this modification to our MPP 20 funding would be breaking any promises or the law?
Madam President, Commissioner Menz, I have not been asked that question, so I haven't researched it. I did work with the board when we wrote it. I don't recall that there was any limitation on what the board could do relative to the dollar amounts for any project. And this is not part of the regional system, so it fits within the definition of a neighborhood park. So I think the answer would be no.
Thank you. And was one of the goals, was there any sort of modernization goals that were associated with MPP 20? I'm just trying to think out loud here, so don't answer that question. So I appreciate, Dan, you explaining that we're still going to have 2.5 years. So we're still going to get to every park with this plan. And then there's still 2.5 years left where we would be going back to other parks for a second run. Do you all know what those parks would be under the current equity matrix? Like, where would those parks be located in the system?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I'll take this one. First, a quick clarification. Right now, if we do not make this change, we're looking at second investments in 2.5 years worth of parks, which equates to, we do between 5 and 10 parks a year, depending on their investment level. Under this action, it would be 1.5 years worth of parks. Those parks would be selected by the equity metric at the time they come into the CIP. So 5 or 6 years before that CIP year, the parks would come in their equity ranking. Barring major changes to the way the equity metric works today, the equity metric is designed to recognize areas of historic inequities first. So it looks more at demographics than it does at site conditions. So I would expect, like the first time around, we would see parks in the upper south and the north side probably getting those second round of investments first. However, I will say that another big piece of the equity metric is looking at the amount of historic investment in a park and also the quality of the facilities there. So if I could put on a very long view prognostication, it doesn't seem like North Commons would be one of those because it would have had significant investment within the previous 15 years, which would lower its ranking for that second round. We'd be looking more at parks that would be in areas where there's a demographic need and also had not had the same levels of investment over the previous 15 years.
Thank you for that. So I think that what I'm getting at here is like this investment is not, as one of my colleagues said, shortchanging the communities. We are still meeting the goals of every park being invested in, and we were always going to have to try and re-up MPP 20 to get another round. We've always expected that. And I think that the historic disinvestment that we've seen in communities surrounding North Commons and what this project could mean for not only North Commons, but the entire system. I mean, this is an opportunity, and this is rehabilitation funds. These funds are going to go to rehabilitating current entities that are at North Commons, especially the pool. So we're also saying to the state, and we're saying to the city, and we're saying to everyone else that we, as a Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, feel that this is important. We're putting more money in the pot to tell others, hey, you know what, this is really important. Because right now, as it stands, we're not putting a significant amount of dollars into a project that's $35 million. So I think that this puts our step forward. This is an opportunity for us to make a statement. And I know it's a lot of money, but I commend the staff for trying to find a way to utilize the money that we have been given to re-up the parks and make sure that they're rehabilitated and do something. This is an opportunity for us to do something big without really losing much. So I don't think that a lot of the parks that are going to get second up are going to be in Commissioner Schaefer's district or others. They're going to be in the north side. And Falwell Park and all the other parks in that area are going to benefit from this project. It's not only going to benefit North Commons Park. This is transformative. So let's do the right thing. And let's accept the staff's recommendation here and move forward finally. And ask the state to help because now we have our money in there. We have our foot in there.
Thank you. Yeah. Commissioner Schaefer?
I'm not going to say much. I kind of spoke my mind last board meeting in committee. Other than I would like to just point out that it is taking $10 million from a finite pot of NPP 20 money. And my question to staff would be, do you anticipate wanting to have another $10 million? Is there any other park in the system that we anticipate coming to the board for another $10 million in the course of NPP 20?
President Forney, Commissioner Schaefer, that's very difficult to predict. We didn't expect at the inception of this project that we would be coming with this ask for this project. I will say that throughout NPP 20 from the very beginning, we have bolstered other projects by sometimes delaying projects that were behind them in the equity rankings or finding outside funding or a variety of other options. So we do have projects that because of the vision, they do exceed their budget, admittedly not to this extent. But since the inception of NPP 20, we have had to fill budget gaps by adjusting the CIP either year over year or within the CIP year.
Okay, thank you. I do think that this is going to leave a bad taste in the public's viewpoint. It is not going to help us when it comes time to ask for more funding. And I think that people are going to question the leadership that are making these decisions. And I would like also to say that we are setting a precedent for commissioners to begin to follow. We are setting a precedent where commissioners can begin to make alliances instead of respecting the CIP process that we have been to this point in time. You are now setting a precedent where commissioners, this board, maybe the next board, can decide to reallocate funds and make alliances between various parks. I mean, I support making the best we can do for North Commons, but this is not the right route to find funding, in my opinion, and it's going to create havoc.
Commissioner Thompson for a second time.
Thank you, President Forney. I will wax poetic for a second and try to hopefully stay within my minute. Everybody in here knows I was the manager of the new North Commons in '97. I was very proud of that. It was lipstick on a pig even then. It's not our fault, if you want to say fault, that the state didn't do bonding, that we've had runaway inflation. This is rare that I disagree with Commissioner Schaefer, but I say, she says it's not going to help us. I think that we've had national partners who've given us money, state partners, city partners. We have massive philanthropy. It signals to them that we're going to do this, and I think it will come back to help us for MPP 20 if we go for a second round. I really firmly believe that, and I would just, with my heart, if you're on the fence about this, I would ask for your support, because just like last week I said, I had a feeling that something wasn't going to pass. I have a feeling this is going to pass, and I would like us to be more robust as a board, because we did vote on this a year ago, and it was challenging then. I just see it through. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Vice President Abene, welcome back.
Thank you, President Forney. So I just make a brief comment. I did support this scale of plan, but if you look at the MPP 20 planning and what was coming up for in this year 26 and subsequently the things that'll be pushed, District 6 was finally going to have more significant investment. There's been some. But if anyone wanted to see that, I have created a spreadsheet so that I could really review it. I was able to use the BI tool. It's very transparent, and I'm grateful for that. But I sort of culled the data so I could see what I was looking for, or try to understand District 6. And that's fine. You know, the citizens of District 6, I think, are they understand what the intent here is of NPP 20 and the investment strategy. I have heard from some people, though, that are concerned about things and feel that it's not fair. And I'll also say District 6 has neighborhoods like Wyndham. Wyndham is pretty far from North Commons. It's a distance, and Wyndham does not have a park. So the residents of Wyndham, the property owners, the renters, they pay into the levy, and they don't actually have a neighborhood park. There's a rec center attached to the school, and there's a playground there that can't be used during school hours, right, by the neighborhood kids that aren't in school age. So I need to vote for District 6 with my vote tonight, and I do support this project. I wish we weren't here at this point. I do hope that the partners understand there's mixed feelings about this, because there are impacts around the city that I think district commissioners need to speak to. But I do think it'll pass. I do think it's going to pass here tonight. Thank you.
So I'll just say a few words. The norm actually has been that we have moved funds like this before. And I believe just about every district except for District 2. This is our opportunity to invest in a community that has the largest youth population in the city, probably in the state. I could go through each one of the districts and comment about where we have done this already. And so I'm not understanding why there is this reasoning that, I'm sorry, I've heard people actually saying that we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, we have been doing that consistently. It's not robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's putting our money where our mouth is. This is about equity, people. I am so proud of this project, and I want to see it go through. So I really would like each one of you who are indicating that you're going to vote against it, please really dig down and realize that each one of your districts have done this before. On that, we'll take a vote on it. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper,
No.
Commissioner Menz,
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
No.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer,
No.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Vice President DeBenny,
No.
President Forney.
Aye.
You have 5 ayes, 4 nays.
That action carries on to, excuse me, on to then our next resolution, 2024-141. Somebody like to
I'll
read that for
move
me?
Resolution 2024-141, resolution amending temporary construction easements granted to the Minnesota Department of Transportation for bridge rehabilitation purposes in Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park.
A second, somebody?
Second.
Thank you. I believe that we need to have a roll call vote on this. Anyway, any questions on this item? Any questions on this item? Not seeing any lights. The secretary would call the roll, please.
Commissioner Alper,
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Vice President DeBenny,
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes.
That action carries. We now then have a discussion item. Director Wiseman will be presenting our recommended budget for 2025 to 2026. If she's catching up with us. Yeah.
All right. All right, good evening, President Forney and Commissioners. I'm here this evening to talk through the mayor's recommended 2025-2026 budget and the information that's most important to us that is included in his budget. So I'm going to start with some easier, simpler ones first, and then get into property taxes, because we have a lot to talk about in property taxes. So the first one, of course, the CIP shows the MPP 20 investment for 2025 through 2030. And you will see that the money remains flat starting in 2026. We need to negotiate with the city our guaranteed amount, and that negotiation will happen in 2025. That will establish the amounts for the next 5 years, which is 2026 through 2030. For Parkway paving, there's actually a little bit of good news in the Parkway paving. So the city Public Works has communicated through the budget process that the PCI that the city expects to maintain in their streets program, the amount of money that's allocated to paving is not sufficient. So they have asked for, and the mayor has recommended, some increases to paving. And because through our agreement that we made last year, we will also be receiving an increase to paving in order for our PCI to be maintained at the same level of the cities. And so for 2025, we have the same amount as they presented last year of 1.2 million. But for 2026 to 2028, they're raising us to the 2.7 million a year early from what the original plan was. And then you'll see in 27 and 28 an amount over $3 million. The city public works asked for this supplement to be longer than that, but the city finance team was not willing to place it in 2029 and 2030 yet, because it's hard to forecast the city's debt capacity over that length of time. So we would expect that they would request the 29 and 2030 supplement in a future budget cycle. For street light replacement, the standard $350,000 is allocated in the mayor's recommended budget. You'll see that it increases to $400,000 starting in 2028, and that is the same as was recommended or adopted in the 2024 budget. Our utility fee for stormwater, the top chart, shows our 42 cents that we started to receive this year in this budget. And you'll see that it's held at that 42 cents going forward for the next 5 years. That was not the agreement that we had with the city, so we have pointed out that typo within their program. And so at the bottom, you will see what was approved in the 2024 budget shows 44 cents for 2025, 45 cents, 46, and 47 cents. And I will be watching to make sure that that correction is made in their recommended budget. All right, property taxes. So as you know, the mayor in his recommended budget and the budget they adopt includes a financial projections. And within those financial projections are the property tax levy projections for 2025 to 2030. I have highlighted the park board line. So we ask for a maximum property tax levy request. We ultimately will find out when the BET adopts the maximum property tax levy on September 18th, what our tax levy will be for 2025. You all have sat through many budget presentations, so you know that we didn't ask for 7% in 2025. We asked for 10.07%. So that conversation will be had. And then for 2026 and 2027, you'll see even lower property tax estimates for the park board at 2.6% and 3.3%. So I'm going to walk through what the impact of those would have on our budget if the BET set the maximum at 7% at 2025, 2.6 in 26, and 3.3 in 27. Before I do that, I want to again show our property tax history from 2015 to 2027. And on this chart, I just want to particularly point out in 2021, we, because of COVID, we essentially asked, we had a 0% property tax levy increase. And you'll see in that same year that the city had a large increase. So that's a big discrepancy between the city and the park board. You'll notice in 2026, the plan that's included in the mayor's recommended budget again shows a pretty large discrepancy between what the city is planning for property tax increase and what they've planned recommended for the park board. We talk about the park board's property tax percentage of total city tax. So if the 7%, 2.6%, and 3.3% held for those out years, we would reduce our percentage of the total city tax from 17.5% down to 16.1%. This is a chart that shows the difference in what we have projected as our property tax levy needs compared to what the mayor has recommended for property tax increases. So you'll see that the line separates in 2025, and by the time we get to 2027, we're about $10 million different between what we have estimated our needs to be and what the mayor is recommending for a property tax levy increase for us. This is our 5-year, or this is our projections. It's not the 5-year. I just wanted to focus on the 3 years. And at the very bottom, I didn't change any of the expenditure costs. I did drop down the property taxes to the levels that the mayor is recommending. And we would have a $2.5 million gap. If we solved for that $2.5 million gap in 2025, we would have an additional $4.4 million gap in 2026 to solve for. And if we solved for the $2.5 million and the $4.4 million in 2027, we would have an additional $3.1 million gap that we would need to solve for. For system equity investment, in conversations that the superintendent had with the mayor before the release of the mayor's recommended budget, he stated that he supported wages only. So the budget was meant to support our contract settlements and our reclassifications and all the things that we have been talking about for the increase to our wages. He did not support system equity investment for 2025, and in 2026, the mayor's recommendation includes $300,000. So over the course of those 2 years with Graco Park and Upper Harbor Terminal coming online, we have asked for just over 1.1 million, of which he is supporting 300,000. I showed North Commons and the additional Upper Harbor money for 2027. I want to be upfront that we are doing a 2-year budget, so what we have presented to the mayor is 25 and 26. He has seen our 5-year projections, so he knows North Commons is coming, and I just wanted to place it on here because the current projection that he has of the 3.3%, obviously would not include North Commons. So it would be an ask that we would have to make in 2027. So we have a little bit of a disconnect between the city and the park board at this moment because we met with the mayor back in May, and When we presented our provision for wage adjustments, it did not include the final settlement for our 363 contract. And so they have included in their 7% the 2.1 million that we had estimated back in May. That has grown to 3.1 million. So we're about $1 million off. And if they were to fund wages only, we would need an 8.09% increase, not the 7% that's currently recommended by the mayor. In 2026, the same issue. Back in May, we were estimating about $600,000 for our provision for wage adjustment. With the settlement of the 363 contract, that has grown to a little over $1 million. If they were to fund only, or if we were to fund wages only, we would need a 5.43% in 2026. Not the 2.67% that is currently forecasted in the mayor's recommended budget. So what does that mean for our budgets? Our budgets obviously are at risk. With estimated deficits of 2.5 million, 4.4, and 3.1, we will have, if those stand, we would have to make some extremely difficult decisions. And just to put this in kind of a, compare it to the gains that we have made over the last 10 years as we rebuilt from the recession, our youth investment is 2.6 million, which you can see in 2025 is almost 2.6 million. So we would be at risk of losing our youth investment. The 4 million in 2026 is pretty close to our NPP 20 maintenance and repair of 4 million. So just between those two, that is 49 full-time employees. And then if you consider the system equity investment being unfunded, those positions that we had asked to be added to our system, that work would need to be absorbed within the system or within the number of employees that we currently have, minus potentially 49 employees, right? So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Bangora because we have started conversations with the city. We've shared this information with the mayor and city staff. And
thank you, President Forney, and thank you, Director Weissman. I won't say a lot. I would say that I think Director Weissman has kind of laid out the concerns that we have, obviously the very difficult budget the next 3 years that we have, in particular the next couple of years. We met with, and thank you to Vice President Benet and President Forney, Director Weissman, Deputy Superintendent Ringgold, and myself. We met with the mayor, and we had presented and walked through this information that I think it was a very honest and frank conversation with the mayor. I think there were things that were probably unknown as we were looking at this, and in particular around the wage and that gap that we had in the wage. We're very clear that in order to make the promise that the mayor had committed to and what even the city council had put forward in a resolution that they would support wage, it's clear to us that 1.09% that we're looking at is a very clear gap that we have to fill because, again, as the city was negotiating their 30% and their 4.5% in the wages that they offered to 363 and also even the Federation when they settled their particular along their officers, we're looking at also parity for our officers. With included in that percentage that we are putting forward, that accounts for that to keep up with not only what the city has done moving forward, but and also for us to be able to maintain our wage and be able to not only look at officers and recruitment and have the same quality officers, and we're offering those dollars to them to make sure that we're in line with the city. So this is nothing new as far as the fact that the city had done a lot of negotiations. We, again, we're ahead, but now we're trying to be at the same place as equal or a little bit ahead of the city in our negotiations. We have work to do. There's no question that the conversation around 2026 in particular was assured by the mayor and his team that we would be working more closely together in 25 and have significant more meetings to make sure that 2026 significant gap that we're looking at, we would have more conversation and we would work through that collaboratively in a way that we hope will get us to a point where that gap is not as great as it is. The 2025, unfortunately, previously we've met, when I would meet with the mayor's office, we would have multiple conversations before we sat down and it was actually presented as a budget from the city with the 7% and 2.6%. That didn't happen this year. Regardless of, we were in a strike, but regardless of that, we did not have any conversation. This was just presented to us as a 7% and 2.6. So we are here at this point, and we are clearly the challenge for this as a staff, as we're working through this, to work with the mayor. I'm hoping that there is some understanding, of course, to 2025 and the challenges we're having as an organization from a staffing level. We don't have the flexibility. 80% of ours is, as you know, is property tax. Well over 78% or so plus more is staffing. There's no flexibility that we have. The city they can go in different departments. They can do 0% in areas, but we don't have that. And so we are fighting for property tax. We are fighting for the service level and staffing for our organization. So we have a lot of work to do. We have, September 18th is where the BET sets the maximum property tax. So we have the next several weeks that we'll be working with our city partners and with our team to make sure that we are meeting the needs of this organization. We've had difficult levy discussions in the past. We've sat with the mayor, we've sat with the finance department in multiple conversations. We sat in that room at the mayor's office. We agreed, we disagreed, but we shook hands and we walked out of that room. That's not what happened at this moment. And so we met with them. We are trying to hopefully open their eyes to really the challenges we're facing. And we have work to do in the next several weeks. This is very difficult, but we want to make it very clear to the board where we currently are at. I cannot sit here and explain to you sometimes the projections and the significant shortfall that we have within our organization, but it is where it is at. And my job and the job of this organization is to go and to fight for the property tax that we need to carry the current service level of our organization and not to impact us in a way that we cannot deliver the services to our constituents. And it's simple as that. And as Julie said, this impacts our youth funding, this impacts our MPP 20 service levels, and we are literally going back to recession time based on what we show here. We've made great strides to get to the point where we're able to provide services that we currently have, and this has taken us completely backwards. So we have a lot of work to do. I just wanted to share that with you all. And if you have any questions, of course, we're available to take answers.
Superintendent Bangora, I, however, am not that optimistic. So I'd like to understand what steps we're taking in regard to future hiring and also any vacancies that we have. I know in the past that's been a mechanism that we've utilized to mitigate or reduce the number of layoffs that are required when we do not have the budget for the staffing that we're currently staffed at. What steps are we taking in that regard, and when do those go into effect?
President Forney and Commissioner Musich, we have already put into effect a hiring freeze. We've put in a hiring freeze that is similar to what we did during COVID, meaning essential positions potentially would still be posted, but any non-essential functions would be held as vacancies. We have discussed but have not decided on having a complete hiring freeze where there's no hiring. I don't know if that is wise for our organization to do that, because there are essential positions that we would need to still hire. We have also, we're also considering a spending freeze in 2024. That has not been implemented yet. The goal would be to help manage the 2024 budget as we have forecasted, our revenues to the end of the year, and we don't want to dip into fund balance any further. And in fact, if we could, we would like to rebuild some of our fund balance. So those, additional vacancies as well as the spending freeze might help us get to that place. But we are definitely starting that process. And as the superintendent works through that, of course, more information will be shared with this board.
And how many vacancies are in roles that have been identified as non-essential at this time?
I do not have that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, President Forney. Director Weisman, do you mind going back? There was a slide that talked about where we peaked out at 18.5% of the total tax in like all the years. I think it was that one. Perfect. Thank you. If we were now, so clearly it's gone down. We peaked out in 2017. If we were roughly at some of our high points, right, the end of the teens, in the total tax, what percent I could run the math, but I don't have all the numbers. Do you have it, would that hit at like 9% ask? Would you, you have an idea in your brain of what that, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I apologize, but I'm guessing it's got to be somewhere between 7 and 10, but.
Yeah, I haven't calculated that number.
Is there also, is there any way, here, let's see if I can ask this question properly. With our parks coming online, is that what creates so then a couple of slides further, I think it's 2.5 this year, right? And then if we're gonna have 4 million in 26, yeah, this one. Are a lot of these the new parks coming online? Or is this just current staffing levels?
So for 2025 and 2026, 2025, there's 566,000 in system equity investment, and 606 in 26 for Upper Harbor Terminal. And yes, there are additional staff for our system, but the system equity investment says as we add parks to our system, we want to operate those parks at the same level of service that we operate any other park. So if these are not funded, what will happen is that we will have to change our service levels throughout the entire city in order to absorb these new facilities and parks into our system. And we used to be in that spot. We started system equity investment about 5 years ago, and it's worked really well. Unfortunately, this year, we know what has happened to the tax base, and we know the impact this all is going to have on residential property owners. And so, we're at this spot.
Thank you. I'll just wax poetic to people who aren't even in the room, but hopefully will be on record. And that's our partners as the city. I don't know if you guys are aware, we've kind of been in the national spotlight the last couple of weeks. You know, Minneapolis is kind of it's the best city in the state, plain. But what makes this city so great are our parks. And I would really hope that our mayor and our city council members and anybody at the state that can help us fund things in other ways, as we were just discussing North Commons, will see that. And I know that we're all having a challenging spot, but that's what I'll just say about that. Thank you so much, Director Weissman.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I think it's really challenging and that you're taking pragmatic steps. I want to throw out one as well. I tell constituents, and I know I hear it from everyone often, about the percentage of funds that we receive from our property taxes and how the city has more sources of income. But we do have fees that we bring in, as we know, through the fees that we've leveraged. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name. Commissioner Benny, the water fee, the stormwater fee, yes. But we also have parking fees, and I would challenge us that these have not been raised in years, and that if we were to merely double the fee, which is not that much because they are so low, that would be a huge increase and would at least, eliminate some of the things that we're going to have to cut. And so I would strongly encourage you, Superintendent Bangora, to put something related to parking fees and an increase in fees in parking into the budget. Because so often these are fees that are paid for by visitors to our park system who do not live in Minneapolis, because so many of our parks are so walkable. You can easily walk there, and the parks, many of the parks that we have, even with paid parking, also have free parking. So I just want to encourage us, we can do it planfully, but just in general, the fees are low. So drastic times take drastic measures. And parking is an auxiliary service. It's not part of our core function, serving youth and protecting the environment. I think, if not now, when?
Yeah, I think that reiterating that, can you explain how that would, maybe even just piggyback on what Commissioner Albert just said around parking fees? Because those are in the enterprise fund, so we would have to designate funds to be moved to the general fund?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, yes, that is what would need to happen. We would increase the fees within the enterprise fund and then establish a transfer out of the enterprise fund in support of the general fund.
Do we do that in other instances, where we transfer funds from the enterprise fund into the general fund to balance the budget?
President Forney and Commissioner Menz, that used to be a strategy back in the 80s, 90s, when golf was especially going well. When Youthline was first established, there was a $100,000 transfer that went to the general fund to support Youthline. Of course, golf fees were used to subsidize or to pay the debt service on the Neiman Fields. So there is kind of precedence. Again, I'll just remind you all that our fund balance within the enterprise fund is not sustainable for the number of assets that we care for in the enterprise fund.
The other thing I had, so with the system equity investment, and specifically Graco, that entails, what is that? So 3.25 positions. Does that include the Spark Studios staff?
President Forney and Commissioner Menz, it does not. include the Spark Studio staff because those staff have already been funded and are included in the budget.
Okay, and that building is being created, and that will, I'm trying to find places where we might be able to delay or cut. I mean, we have some Spark Studios happening. Maybe it's necessary. Would that be a place where we could look for something that hasn't been established yet in that community? And I'm speaking from my community's perspective, where we could save some money for now and in the future?
President Forney and Commissioner Benz, we are going to be looking at every aspect of our budget. Superintendent, did you want to add something?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I think that's the work that we're going to have to do. Multiple of these questions that we're asking, particularly around vacancies and positions, and we have to look across the entire organization to understand what we're going to have to do to meet these challenges. So those questions are absolutely on the table for all things that we're looking through, but we're going to spend time as an organization, as a team, to bring to you a lot of these very specific things that we can do within the organization, and where we're going to find needs or cuts that are going to be specific to what the priorities are, not only from the priorities of the board, but also from the priorities of staff and what we need to continue to provide. I mean, if we look at even Great Go Park and Spark Studios, it might not be that the place is operating at a full capacity, but we might have hours that we could operate Spark Studios, but not at the level. So there's all sorts of different ways we can look at this. And so we will absolutely have more to kind of work through and then bring forward to this board on some of the challenges that we're going to be facing.
And each year, Director Wiseman, so each year the mayor is going to bring us a new projection for the next 5 years. So the projection right now is a $4.4 million budget for the next year. But this process is going to start over again. So even though we're thinking about 5 years out, we're also really focused here. And I'd really like to understand with the BET, which I served on for the first year, which I was kind of, it's a new place. The BET has to approve the tax levy. So if we can put an amendment forward to say we are asking for 10.1%, and the BET has the right to do that, so they could overstep the mayor's budget? Or can anybody answer that question as to how that process might work when there are discrepancies?
Thank you, President Forney. Commissioner Menz, I'll answer it as best I can. Yeah, the maximum tax levy is set by the BET, and there will need to be anywhere from 3 to 4 votes approving that, depending on how many people are showing up to the meeting. We have had some absentees lately. And any kind of amendment could come forward to lower the maximum amount, to raise the maximum amount, I would think even arbitrarily, or tie it to something else, or possibly ask for it to be raised and look for some other savings in another location. But you would need to have those 3 or 4 votes aligned to do that. And that's the tricky part.
And Superintendent, is that something that that's why we try to work directly with the mayor's office, and why your office is just working directly with that negotiation team to make sure that we can get closer? Are there any suggestions that we can do as a board right now to sort of encourage these things, or to show that we're making progress towards reducing that amount? Like, what do you need from us?
President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I think that is part of the conversations that we are having, the negotiations we are having right now currently, right? So having, the team that I mentioned earlier, having myself and Director Weissman, Deputy Superintendent Ringgold, Vice President Bene, President Forney, we're having these conversations right now, and we're working on strategies on how we approach this. A lot of this is very, we have to take steps. Right now, we're working with the mayor in the finance area. We are looking at other possibilities that we can do to approach what we need in service levels. So there is options and things that we are discussing. As far as the board is concerned, we take directions from the board. And so President Forney and Vice President Bene, as they are here and working through this, we will get directions from the board. We will have more conversations in the next several weeks to see what we can do and how we can approach this. I think the board's support is very clear. I know we need to have a levy that's going to support our service level. So we're clear about where our 10.07 is. And now we're working through with the mayor, and we're going to work with the BET to determine how we can get the needs that we have for our organization. So I would just say that we will be working with this board and asking for support and asking for what we need as in the next several weeks as we go forward. But right now, you can count on the fact that this, right now with Vice President Abene on the BET, that she is doing the work and having the conversations, and we all are. And so we're working on different strategies.
Yeah, a couple things. First, I mean, just on to the fee conversation, I mean, I am absolutely 100% in favor of increasing fees for just about anything within the, I know it's within the enterprise fund, and I know in the past that was used to kind of deal with paying for, fund new increases, but in times of crises, and times of being shortchanged by the city hall, I think it can absolutely be used as a temporary tool to shore up our budget. It's a tool we can use to provide services for constituents. So let's increase money where we can, and if we can reach to a point where we're actually making money in the enterprise fund and we can help out there, I think that's a great way to kind of show that we're trying to increase our fund diversity. And I support that. Two, just kind of observations of, the politics of it. Parks are basically the only thing that consistently polls as something that our constituents and the residents of Minneapolis are okay being taxed and increasingly taxed for. And it's something that our parks and our system is something that folks at City Hall frequently tout and support and kind of utilize. And I know we've been working very hard privately to kind of describe the importance of this, but I also think we have to utilize our public voice and our public power and our public perception and persona to accurately portray to the public that what is essentially happening in these next 3 years is that we are having a $10 million cut from the mayor and from the city hall. And I know it's nice to be civil and it's important to be nice, but frankly, what is provided to us is unacceptable. And I think if we are to accurately portray that to our constituents, they too would find that unacceptable. Because when they look at our city, they find great pride in what we offer here. And I know that they would be willing to pay more in order to meet all of these needs that are here in front of me. So my suggestion is, we are, a city service organization, but we're also a political organization, is to maybe get and utilize our political power a little more in the public realm to perhaps move things forward for us so that we don't have to, and I appreciate Commissioner Musich with the practical cut conversation. We are going to have those conversations on some level, but hopefully not to the same extent. I'm just saying, so my suggestion is let's spread the word of how this is going to really hurt. Thanks.
Thank you, President Forney. I have a question regarding the current available investment balance in the enterprise fund that I'm hoping you can answer for me, Director Wiseman. Do we have the amount of money that staff have identified as necessary to keep those enterprise businesses making money, those that are, or bringing them up to a place where they can command the fees that will allow them to be profitable?
President Forney and Commissioner Musich, at the end of 2024, our fund balance in the enterprise fund was about $3.2 million, which is quite low if you think about all of the assets that we have within our system, in the enterprise system. And so to do major investments, we have had to go to bonding in order to finance those investments. And then the enterprise fund has to pay off those investments, pay off that debt service. The example of that is the Parade Ice Garden, of which we are still paying just over $1 million annually to pay off the debt for the rehab that happened at Parade Ice Garden now several years ago, right? Going on 20 years. So.
Okay, thank you. So while I'm in support of us increasing fees to support our enterprise fund staffing, I would not be in support of us moving funding out of that enterprise fund to fund general fund needs. It's something that our predecessors did. Whenever they felt pressure to find money somewhere, they did that. And you can see the ongoing cost of that when you drive in our parking lots that have giant potholes, when you're out at our golf courses where we have some serious needs around maintenance and ongoing investment to make them a higher playable place so that people will pay higher rates for them. We can't charge that right now because the people won't pay. They're not worth it.
Thank you, President Forney. I'll just speak a little bit more to the BET, to some of what Commissioner Olson was commenting on about sort of the politics of this a little bit. I think it's valid to start to have conversations, and I think the most effective way would be to connect with members of the BET. So we have Council President Payne, Vice President Chugtai, we have 2 elected members. The president of the BET is Steve Brandt. The vice president of the BET is Samantha Priestinson. Mayor and me, you know where I stand. But I think that I think it's worth doing. I would say there's actually a lot of positive feelings about the park board across that entity. And I think that we are reasonably making a case. I think that the 2 city council members were very much in support of the workforce here at the park board, showing up with striking workers a couple of times, sending us letters and resolutions and whatnot. And so at the very minimum could commit to an increase to cover the cost of our negotiated contract and our other wage obligations here for our other workers in this organization. So I think if you know these guys, just call them. And I'm actually working, I've talked to them all too, and I'm working to have deeper conversations, especially now that we have the data and the presentations. They're pro-park for sure, and that's good for us, so do it. I support it.
Director Wiseman, can you just remind me if there's a standard inflationary measure that they tack into this levy increase every year?
President Forney and Commissioner Schaefer, within the 4.3%, the inflationary factor for other operating costs is at 2%. And so our provision for inflation, this increase of 0.88% property tax levy increase, was to hopefully start to rebuild our spending power. So it was an extra 2.5% above the 2% that's already included in.
Okay, so that's not something that we have to negotiate every levy increase. That 2% is a standard, or is that something that you have to negotiate? I mean, obviously it says, you're telling me you have to negotiate anything above that, but is that 2% kind of, is there an agreement about that?
That has, President Forney, Commissioner Schaefer, that has been our standard in how we forecast out our projections. I would say that has historically been supported by the mayor and the BET. However, with 2026 and 2027, the recommended increase for us is nowhere near even the 4.3%. So
Okay.
I don't believe that there's any inflationary factor built into at least the 2026 number.
Okay, thank you, that's really helpful for me. And then I guess I would just say, residents are gonna start to feel the pain of these tax increases that, maybe we haven't heard the uproar yet, but I think it's coming. And I agree, people support parks and support increases for parks. But at the same time, I think we as a park system have to be sensitive to that. And I think one way is for the public to be able to see our pain like we know they're experiencing pain. Maybe that means not opening one of these parks and that it sits there for the mayor to drive by and see it's not open. Or maybe it's, something drastic like that. That we're committed to the level of service that we have fought for this time. We're not gonna just let it slip away. So we're gonna just let that sit there until so people can drive by it and remember we did not get the increase. So I'm all for having the park board have some kind of public perception of pain as well as what is coming for the public.
Grateful that we did have the meeting with the mayor and his staff. They heard us, and I'm very grateful for that. I also want to add that he has once again shared with us his true commitment to our independent park board. I think we all have to remember the number one reason why the mayor is here is because of our park system when he ran the Twin Cities Marathon. So that was very reassuring to hear just how committed he is to us. And I also want to add that he heard and we heard that there is a need for alternative revenue sources. And he said very clearly he wants to work on that, looking at, where can we be finding different things, speaking to real estate taxes and everything, knowing 80% of our budget is dependent upon that. And yes, the impact is largely being carried by our lesser valued homes. And that's where generational wealth is being denied. And to me, that's a horrific thing. And we need to go to the state to talk about that regressive tax needs to be really evaluated. There are a lot of alternatives of ways that we can look at things. We know that at the state, we're supposed to be receiving, 40% and what, 8? 4? Okay, 8% is all we're getting. So we really need to work on that. And very frankly, all of us know the next year we're going into an election year. This might be our rallying cry. How can we create new resources of revenue? Because we just keep on putting it on the backs of our homeowners, and that, as a realtor, I can tell you, it's always been a difficult thing for me to realize. People who are, the higher valued homes and everything, it's an option for them. But the people who it is not an option, Michelle Obama actually spoke to that last night. I think it's really a critical thing that we need to all be talking about in this next year. That doesn't solve next year's budget, but we need to attack where every single year I feel like we're struggling with this. And so I really hope that all of us can join together in trying to advocate for finding new revenue sources for us. With that, I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting that we will be having, if it's voted out of committee, Resolution 2024-160, we will then be bringing that forward. So I will recess the full board, and we will go on then to recreation. I'm not sure who's going to be chairing that.
The
but
time
go
being
for it.
7:04, I'll call the Recreation Committee to order. Secretary Ringgold, if you could please take the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Here.
Commissioner Menz.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Co-Chair Rucker.
Here.
Co-Chair Musich.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve our agenda at this time.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you. We don't need a second, but thank you, Commissioner Menz. All those in favor of adopting the agenda before us, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We now have an agenda. We do have some minutes from December 6th of 2023. Could someone please move those for me?
I will move the minutes from December 6th, 2023.
Lovely. Any comments or corrections needed on those? Seeing no lights. All those in favor of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those carry. Lovely. This evening, we have Mimi Kalb, our Assistant Superintendent of Recreation, here to tell us all about centralized registration here at the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Take it away, Mimi.
Thank you. Co-chairs Rucker and Musich and board members. We are here to present the implementation of centralized registration. If you remember back in '23, several board members asked us to come forward with if we went to centralized registration, what could and possibly would that look like? And at the superintendent's direction, also, we have been working on the centralized registration implementation. And I'm going to go through a little history. So back in July of '23, I presented as a study item the concept of centralized registration and captured a lot of great input and direction from the board members. The determination was that the current process for youth sports registration is systematically inequitable. Centralized registration is a solution to make sure there's sports offerings for all youth in Minneapolis, and it's equitable for all youth in Minneapolis. So we put together a committee, and the committee has been doing a lot of work over the last 14, 15 months. Some of this work includes maximizing our software tools through the ActiveNet 2.0, working closely with the ActiveNet Steering Committee, and making sure some of these changes can be implemented, how they'll be implemented, and all of that, working through that. Streamlining the communication tools that also are within the software. We're working on an age verification standard with youth sports. There's age verification for every sport, every child. So we're working on improving that. We've done a lot of research and data compilation. We've surveyed parents, coaches, and staff to get their feedback on the current registration model and any improvements they'd like to see. We've researched what other municipal organizations do, and we're compiling youth sports data from previous years. With that said, I'd like to acknowledge the committee of people, the team, and again, it's been a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of helpful work through this group. Nicole Hernandez, Jack Barsh, Tim Great, Kent Brevick, Lyndon Wierswerda, and Jamie Neldner. And I'd like to thank two of the members who have...
Jamie's hiding behind you.
Oh, Jamie, you snuck in. Okay, that's all right, good. So three that have, waited through till this presentation and are here to help support me if there's anything I need help with. Tim Great is the athletic manager over youth sports. Jack Barsh is currently interim director over athletics, aquatics, ice, and golf. And Jamie Neldner, see, now I'm not prepared for your title, administrative program advancement and administrative services. Administrator. Sorry. But I want to thank them, and they've done a lot of very helpful work and are a part of this coming to fruition. So I wanted to talk about the survey results. a lot of the survey results came up to specific themes, that we have been working through. So people felt that registration isn't easy, that registration could be easier and simplified for families. They're looking for the fees to be aligned. The fees are all over, depending on what park and what area of the city. They want to be able to register just once and be placed on a team. They want convenient locations. They want to know exactly what parks are offering a sport and in the age division that they need, as well as having practice locations close to home. There was a lot of comments on fair play and competition, a lot of concerns about the disparity in skill level and coaching. Not only the negative experience of losing, but the negative experience of, winning by, an extreme amount. So, and then consistent scheduling. Parents noted, that practices and games, the schedules often change from the point of registration to the actual real world when they're out there, and the practice may change or the game may change based on impacts that happen, and I can get more into that if necessary. So, with that said, I'm going to go through what currently happens and then what we are changing it to. So currently, hang on, I got to keep up with my... Currently, a youth who wants to participate registers online or in person at the park. Okay. Participation varies from park to park. Some parks offer some sports and not others. They offer some age groups and not others. So again, each park chooses their sports that they're going to offer, or a sport. So I think it's difficult for parents to navigate that and find their particular child's age and sport that they're looking for. If a park can't fill a team, the players are encouraged to go to other parks. There isn't always like a perfect roadmap that you will get accommodated at this park. So I think, there's a lot of feedback from families that it takes a lot of work, and some give up along the way to find a perfect fit for their player. So with that, many youth don't get the opportunity to play. The park team is then put into the citywide league if they have enough to fill the team. And then the coaches are recruited and certified through that park. The practices are scheduled through that park. And the citywide youth sports team puts together game schedules and official schedules. Now, in this current system, we have teams that come into the league from the outside. There are 3 current sports councils that participate in our leagues, and there's 13 outside agency groups that participate in our leagues. Both entities register the kids through their own software. They set their own fees and they collect the fees, and it stays within their organization. We pay to certify the coaches, which includes a background check and other staff involvement to go through the coaches certification program. And they're allowed to enter these teams into our league at no charge. Okay. I'm going to have a couple more bubbles. So uniforms and equipment quality aren't always equitable because of the variation of who's running what. The other concern is there's a certain amount of liability with these being outside of the park board and knowing, right, what's going on at practices, or there's not a lot of oversight of these outside organizations, which can put our organization into a liability situation at times. And there's a few stories I can share if necessary. So here is what we will be doing to make this a more equitable registration process. A youth wants to participate in an MPRB sport. All the participation fees will be aligned across the city. The game and practice schedules will be predetermined by staff. Staff will work to put together site options and practice options that the parent or guardian can choose that's best for their family's schedule. So parks are designated to offer specific sports and ages. The participant registers online at any park. The participant would identify 3 preferred park sites based on the information in the registration during their registration period. There will also be information offered in that registration information about practice days. It might not be specific times, but practice sites and days so that they can plan their families' many activities that they're doing. So the teams are formed based on the preference that is given. The citywide league is established. The coaches and are recruited and certified through not only the youth sports staff, but the recreation staff as well, the recreation center staff, sorry. So it will be a team effort of recruitment and certification, and they'll be supporting each other through that. Uniforms and equipment will be ordered centrally through the youth sports staff. So not only will it help make equity amongst the types of uniforms, everything will be, uniformed, and there could be an extreme cost savings ordering that much in bulk. There won't be any pre-existing teams in the leagues. Everybody registers centrally and gets put onto teams. Anybody in the city of Minneapolis can register and be a part of this MPRB program. And then the citywide league games are scheduled by the youth sports staff. So, how does it look when a parent or guardian goes to register? They will go into the youth sports homepage and register for a select season. They'll choose the sport that's offered during that season. They'll select the age division that's available during that season. And they'll choose their top 3 locations that are offered for their preferred site, their age division, and taking into note their practice and game options that are offered. From there, the youth sports team will take all of that information through our ActiveNet software and develop the teams, and every person who registers will be put on a team. So here's our timeline. In September, we'll be developing the process in our software, as well as continuing testing of the registration process. In October, we'll communicate with the sports councils, the outside agencies, notify all the coaches and families that we have data on from previous seasons of the change. In November, we'll continue testing the process. We'll begin to train all of the staff. We'll start a heavy marketing campaign about the new process. We'll have community meetings. We'll develop a video. We plan to offer an option to sign up for updates, and we'll have a web page that continuously is updated and talks about this. We also plan to have meetings out in the community at specific sites where the new process will be presented, questions answered, you know, get people ready for how they're gonna navigate the process. In December, we continue testing, training, and marketing. In January of '25, we plan to launch with our spring and summer sports. And what are the benefits to this, which we've talked, you know, about, but just to reiterate, participants can register for a sport and a site preference. There's an aligned process, so everybody's getting the same experience. Customers don't have to struggle to find a team. Participants are placed on a team based on their requests. The team practice sites will be scheduled in advance and advertised for the registration. Teams will practice at the appropriate facility for their age group. We talked about this at the study item. A lot of these teams just practice where they can find a field, and it might not be the same size of base paths or, you know, soccer size field that their age group actually plays. So we will make sure they're learning on a facility that meets the needs of their age and sport. This will help us with more efficient field scheduling by scheduling these practices ahead. Right now, parks block off all their fields. They're not sure how many teams or what ages they're gonna have. They keep that blocked off. Our permit people are unable to schedule the fields because things are held until well after the teams are formed. This impacts a lot of potential revenue through our athletic facility permitting area and could really open up a lot more availability for all of the users who use our athletic facilities. There's a huge demand for our athletic facilities. We turn a lot away. I think our staff has done a great job trying to move puzzle pieces around and find spaces that we didn't even know exist, you know, a piece of grass to accommodate some of these practices and things. But this will really structure that and I feel bring some revenue generation through our permit area. Uniforms and equipment will be purchased in bulk and they'll be equitable across the system. That also should bring a cost savings. We'll have aligned fees across the city, centralized coach recruitment and certification. This will improve the scheduling of umpires. We pay a lot for umpires and officials, and we'll be able to purposely schedule multiple games in a row at a site. And that's a win-win for not only our contracted staff, but our own staff. There won't be any pre-existing teams, which will promote fair competition. And every child will get an opportunity to play. And now I'll take on any questions or comments.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Kalb, for that really thorough presentation. Before I go to questions, I would just like to commend you and your team for really taking a comprehensive approach to looking at what exists now and thinking about what could exist in the future to address all the problems people have brought to our attention. I don't think you missed checking a box, honestly, of the huge laundry list of complaints that we'd received about the current system. So, yeah, I wanted to thank you for putting in that hard work and really bringing us something that took the time to address everything that people have brought to you. I certainly know that my family could have benefited from a more simplified process when my kid was going through the system. He's since aged out, but maybe someday his kids can benefit from this. So, Commissioner Thompson, for the first time.
Thank you, Chair Musich. I just want to echo that and thank you for all of the time that you put into this, that everybody did. I also have personal anecdotes that I could share about how it really did not serve people much in the past. And I would just really like to additionally add that I feel that this would be great for many organizations in the city, schools, to consider, as they have some problematic similar booster clubs that make things challenging. And I think that we could take the lead on this. And so that's the way, when I saw this laid out, I saw like even bigger impacts, because I think this is very equitable, especially somebody who represents areas of the city that have monetary challenges. We could just put it that way. I'm just very grateful, and the simplicity of it too. So thank you so much for everyone who worked on it.
Commissioner Menz.
Thanks, Commissioner Musich, Chair Musich. Can you go back to the new process diagram, which was really good? I really appreciate that. First question I have is, what pitfalls are you anticipating with the new structure regarding councils, and I know Commissioner Rucker, used to work with PALs, like how do we see those, or how are we anticipating or planning to address this new system with the marketing campaign? Like what's our strategy around presenting this to groups who, there are some times where people have benefited from using the system, but there's also clubs like Jerry Gamble's or police activities leagues where, those kids are getting opportunities through those organizations and utilizing it. So I'm wondering how we're going to negotiate those opportunities that were provided by the old system and build them in to this new simplified system.
So Co-Chairs Musich and Rucker and Commissioner Mentz, we feel very strongly that there's still an opportunity for any of those organizations to register through this centralized registration process. And, they would select a park that, meets their needs. They will not be bringing a team in, but every kid that participates at Gamble's or PAL or any other organization has the opportunity to register and play sports and be a part of a team that may have some of their teammates from the past and may have new teammates, depending on what that parent or guardian wanted to register for and where and practice times. I think it gives families a simplistic group of options that they can choose from based on what their family activities and demands are.
That's great. I think that it's something that we can just say, this is the process, and how do we work within that process. The one suggestion I do have that I think that as I'm in the youth sports world and I'm in the parks, that I see that doesn't necessarily, is not really reflected in this process, is where we're training and recruiting coaches is way too far down the line. So our players and our families, although the timing of practices and the timing of games is important, the most important thing to the user experience in youth sports is the coach. And players will play based on whether or not they know they might be with a coach. We can't guarantee that at all times, but if we can put the coaching a little earlier around like youth wants to participate, we're recruiting coaches there so that we know possibly where those coaches might be, so that those families can make effective decisions around their ranking system. Because it's not only about like the timing or the day of the week, it's also about the trusted adult that they have had a connection with that really supports their growth as young people. So I would really encourage us to move that up a little bit.
Co-Chairs Musich and Rucker, Commissioner Mentz, yes, we really feel like this coach recruitment and organizing the coaches and training them is a year-round, continuous process. And this system will ensure that there's constantly attention to it. When we're depending on other, staff or organizations to find that coach or recruit that coach or make sure the coach understands the rules and all the details of their particular age group and sport, I think it's going to make it more standardized, and there will be campaigns. I mean, we see a broad vision of how we can make that better. We've heard you and others about our, the lack of communication with good coaches, making sure they're coming back, making sure they have the tools they need to succeed. Having this all in one place, I think, is going to help strengthen that and enhance that.
So do you anticipate, like, before, when the youth wants to participate, you all will be predetermining which parks will have which sports and age groups based on demographic data?
Based on demographic data and based on historical data but also we're excited because we know a lot of the data on the teams or the parks that didn't form a team, right? So we know certain pockets where they almost got enough and they couldn't put that team in, and some of those kids went by the wayside, probably, or found another spot. So we are going to make sure that we select those sites as well to try to further develop those areas that have had some potential in the past and just not been able to get over the hump. So I think it's going to really improve opportunity for these young people to find a place, play, and for the families, less challenges in where I'm going to be, when do I have practice, I don't find out until the team's formed, the team isn't, there's not enough. I mean, right now there's a lot of back and forth, and we have over 750 teams in our youth sports program without the councils or outside agencies. The outside agencies are just under 50 teams in the entire 11 sports. So the impact here is, way more prevalent on our current kids and families that are in our MPRB leagues. And we do feel that, there's still an opportunity for all those other organizations to participate, and nobody will be turned away. Anyone who registers will be accommodated, hopefully for one of the three that they designate as their preference. We'll admit we're going into this with high hopes, and we put a lot of work into it. There will be things that need to be tweaked along the way, and we will address those as they happen and make it the best product we can.
And I guess one other question I have is, what would, following the registration, following the simplified, they register, what's the communication plan with families following that registration?
And we'll be putting that together. I mean,
Okay.
we have done a truckload of work to kind of get our product put in place, and that will be the next step, working with Dawn and her team, on all of this communication that needs to happen, ideas for it's not just sending an email or putting it on a website. We know there's going to have to be hands-on, meetings and offerings to families to help them not only get registered, but once they're on a team, there will be a standardized process for how that parent finds out, what the next steps are, who the coach is, and all of that stuff. It's a big undertaking, but we feel that it's worth the work because it's such a positive change.
I guess my question was, like, from registration to when team forms, sometimes there's like 2 months in there. Like, is there an expectation on the rec center directors or the area the areas to communicate with the families? You're registered, this is the next step. This is when your team's going to form.
And that will all be part of our communication plan, and yes,
Okay.
when there's outreach, and it'll be part of our training plan for these recreation center staff.
Cool.
What FAQs and, what information do they need to continuously be sharing, and what outreach, and, and they'll be supported by the youth sports team doing that.
Thank you, Superintendent Gallup.
You just got promoted. Congrats.
Assistant.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you. I thank you for allowing me to ask my question. I'm not on this committee. How does this change affect some of our adult field rental leagues? Do you see this change affecting any of that process?
Co-chairs Musich and Rucker, Commissioner Schaefer, we feel this is going to enhance that. It's going to give us more opportunities to coordinate between youth and adult sports and rentals. It's going to open up potential areas that can be permitted because they're not being held for the different leagues. There'll be a streamlined communication with the youth and adult sports team on, what areas do we typically use? Those would not be on the youth sports options. So it can and will be coordinated to probably give us more open spaces for those folks.
I guess I had one other quick question, just because it's an organization I'm familiar with, but the futsal league with the East African community with Caleb, would they then not be able to, or is that going to all have to route through the centralized system?
Co-chairs Musich and Rucker and Commissioner Schaefer, we don't offer futsal as part of our youth sports program.
Okay.
That is an outside group that reserves space through our permitting department.
Okay.
And then they run their own league. There's a lot of that happens in our system. There's a lot of independent groups that are renting our spaces and running their own leagues.
Okay, so that's helpful. I wasn't sure if they were affected by that change. No, thank you.
Superintendent Bangora.
Thank you, Chair Musich. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to kind of just say something very simply is that I am, the people that sit in the room here, Tim and Jack and Jamie and Mimi and this entire team, I cannot express to you how important this is and what this means for this organization. I've worked, 19 years prior to coming back in this role, and I worked in the rec centers. I can tell you anecdotal stories of the youth that I was, responsible for in all the programs and the challenges we face without this, what we saw in that kind of complicated structure. I experienced it day in and day out. I lost a lot of kids to sports. We couldn't fit them into places. We had teams that were coming in and that were playing that were stacked. My child, in particular, my son, when he was trying to play basketball, he got beat up in a couple of leagues, and that was it for him because the experience that he had with teams that were really stacked, and it wasn't a fair place to play. And this changes tremendously that effort, and I'm so grateful. I look for simple wins, all right? We have a very challenging job in this park system, and we do some amazing things. This, for me, is so significant because what it's going to do along the equity and around the fairness to all of our youth that play in our sports and our programs. This is so significant for me. I'm so proud of it, and I want to say thank you for this because this has been years in the making, and we are here, and I can't express to you how important it is. We took this leap. We knew this board would be supportive. We've had these discussions over the years, but we're here today with this, and so I cannot express my gratitude towards this team and the work they have done, and grateful for Mimi, when you gave instructions around this and the board supported it, that we took and ran with these wonderful people that are sitting in here. So I just want to say thank you. And this is going to mean so much. And we talk about a change in our park system where there's this historical, this arc. This is one of them. And it's going to impact the lives of these young people and fairness and equity to the young people that come to our parks. It's so important. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bangora. Something I'd left out of my previous comments that I'd like to close with now that I see no additional lights is just how much I appreciate consistency being applied to the way that we're delivering these services. you shouldn't have to live in a certain neighborhood to be able to figure out how to play on a sports team. You should be able to move around the city and be able to find out how to register simply, because it's the same everywhere. You shouldn't have to know someone to be able to play. So I really appreciate that consistency that we're bringing to the experience for everyone across the entire city, no matter where you live. So thank you for making that happen. And I look forward to seeing how this rolls out and hearing from participants about what's working, what's not, where we might want to tweak it in the future as it rolls out in '25. So thank you all for your time, both on the project and for coming to the meeting tonight, sitting through listening to us talk all night. Have a great night. And with that, I will adjourn the Recreation Committee.
With that, I will note the time is 7:40, and I'd like to call the Planning Committee to order. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Alper.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Here.
Chair Benny.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would somebody move the agenda, please?
I will move the agenda.
Are there any questions or any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. We have one set of minutes. Would somebody please move the minutes and mention the date as well?
I'll move the Planning Committee minutes of August 7th, 2024.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We have one action item, one resolution, actually. So would somebody please move the resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2024-160, resolution approving design, installation, and maintenance agreements with Mia Jennings, Gino Okoke, Shade Pratt, and Brianna Williams for public art within the North Commons Park Improvement Project.
We haven't, this is the first that we've heard of this. I don't know if people would like a presentation. I would say there's probably some nice pictures to look at, so I think, yeah?
I'm loath to extend meetings, but I would love
Okay,
a short
all right.
presentation.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be long, but I think it also gives the artists a little bit of
Yes.
attention, too, and we get to see their work. Thank you, Mr. Elias.
Yes, thank you, Chair Benny. Commissioners, no, that's not the right one. Sorry. Yeah, it's a very brief presentation. A lot of this work, commissioners, comes from the North Service Area Master Plan. There's a guiding principle. Am I sharing my screen? Guiding principle number 4 from the North Commons Park Plan, that the design of all facilities should be welcoming to the Northside community and create the feeling that local neighbors are welcome in these spaces and that local artists, designers, and craftspeople could contribute to making the design welcoming. The city of Minneapolis, through the Art in Public Places grant program, did authorize a $200,000 grant for public art through their program for this project. An artist, or actually 2 artists, Roger and Chongo Cummings, were selected by that selection panel, and we worked within with that selection panel as well to identify artists that have deep ties to North Minneapolis to enhance the interior spaces of this project. So this first opportunity is in the background here. It's a lobby mural. It's a stand in art, but Mia Jennings is a North Minneapolis Hmong resident that has done lots of work and was selected for that project. We will also be doing, within the field house on the north wall on the lower level, a mural within the new field house. And Gino Okoke, who has worked in North Minneapolis and is an African-American male, will be designing and installing and then maintaining a mural within that facility as well. And this is an example of some of his work. This is not the mural that will be installed, but merely an example of his work that helped for us to see his talent to commission that project. We also will be having a new youth lounge within the existing community center space that's going to double also as a performance space. Shade Pratt has been identified to design and install that mural and do community engagement around what that mural would look like within that space. And finally, Brianna Williams. So on the east side of the field house, that's going to be facing other residents across the road. We will be applying vinyl artwork in a similar manner to some of the artwork that was applied in the City of Minneapolis Public Services Center. That will be designed by Brianna Williams, who's a North Minneapolis resident as well. That will be facing some of those residents and providing a little bit of privacy for the residents that will be facing directly across James Avenue. And this is an example of some of the vinyl work that she's done in the past as well. So these 4 artists are going to be part of the Park Board's project funding. And then there's also the $200,000 that comes from the city. So in total, the city and the Park Board would be investing $275,000 into public art within this project.
Thank you. So with that, then, I mean, it's probably been expressed to the board in the past, but there will be some other art installations or art pieces as part of the overall project, I'm assuming outside or over at the water park, or?
Right, Chair Abene, yes. The Art in Public Places grant program has to be a publicly accessible public art, so it can't be within the facility.
Okay.
It's been planned to be a facade applied artwork of some kind. Whether it's 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, includes lighting or not, is sort of all TBD. But if you look at some of the renderings from the aerial views, there's a cutout, a recess in both the north facing facade as well as it wraps the corner to the west facing facade, which faces the water park, to be sort of like a welcoming feature of the building.
Great, okay. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes, so these four artists are not being funded by the 200K grant from the city. I guess my question is, why are we kicking this off and approving this now if we have such a significant shortfall in the budget? And, the building isn't even close to being built out. So I'm just questioning the timing. And, maybe this is something that needs to be cut if we don't have the funding.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, it's a very fair point. We've been holding within our uses for this project throughout the entire duration of the project an allocation for public art based on the guiding principles from the master plan to use local artists to create a welcoming experience. We feel fairly strongly that the community engagement work that the public artists are going to be doing, Roger and Shango Cummings, we'd like these artists to be at those conversations with them so that we're hosting one event to talk about public art within North Commons Park as opposed to 5 independent events that would take more staff time from myself, as well as be an inefficient use of engaging with community. So if approved, we would be leveraging those 5 artists to be engaging community simultaneously around how the public art that's going to be applied to this project holistically can work together.
Okay, and when is this public art meeting happening?
Sorry, Commissioner Schaefer, the community engagement meetings?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So those will be planned with the artists once we're under contract with them. We will be asking them to engage the public at events like West Broadway Open Streets. They'll also be organizing their own events. They haven't been scheduled as of right now.
Okay, I just think we're kind of, it seems odd to me. The timing seems odd. That's all.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair Benny. I concur that the timing is a little weird. When I saw this, I was like, huh. So, but I have some nuts and bolts questions. Is it Sade Pratt is listed as being from Oregon? Why did we choose that artist?
So Sade, Commissioner Abene, Commissioner Thompson, sorry, Chair Abene, Commissioner Thompson. Sade Pratt has history back when she lived in the area, teaching youth sports at North Commons Park.
Okay, that's good to know. And then my other question is, all the artists are being compensated in different parameters. Is that because of the size and the scope of the artwork, or were there different considerations that?
Correct. Chair Bennett, Commissioner Thompson, in working with Mary Altman at the City of Minneapolis, who works in their public art program, we tried to identify an appropriate funding level for the scope of the work so that the artists can get paid and also complete the work to a high level, a high quality level.
Thank you. And third question, what would we do if we don't have public art in there? Or if we, like, do we need that to be now? Could we do it after North Commons is built? You know, like, I'm just out of curiosity, cart horse kind of thing.
Yeah, Chair Bennett, Commissioner Thompson, if we do not approve these today, we would not proceed with interior public art until potentially later. Takes a long time for artists to engage with community. The hope is that we're opening this facility and showing off the public art within the facility at the same time. It would be, you know, painted walls as opposed to murals, is the reality. You know, I did a little bit of a brief analysis. You know, there's often with certain state-funded projects, percent for art requirement. This project is proposing 0.17% of this project budget be going to public art. So it's far below what other state-funded projects are required to do. And so we perceived the $75,000 even on the same night as we were making a major recommendation about a CIP amendment to, with or without this public art, that amendment was still required. This is $75,000 to North Minneapolis-based public artists that we felt like it was appropriate to move forward at this time.
Is, I guess what I'm not, the thing now is, what I'm not understanding is what would they be engaging on? They're artists. And I say that coming from a world of artists. Like, what would they, I mean, they probably have something that we're basically commissioning them to create a work of art for us. So that's the part, I guess, maybe I'm confused why it had, because we could still approve everybody in, 2 years, and they could paint it on the wall once it's ready to go, right? I'm just curious on that piece of it.
Yeah, Chair Bennett, Commissioner Thompson, and all the public art projects that we've been involved with, whether it's city funded or not, the contract for the public artists requires that they engage community about what they feel, the community would feel, makes them feel welcome in a space, what is right for Southeast Bede-Makaska. The artists who did the Hayata Atunwe gathering space needed to engage community to understand what that space should be, and what images, words, graphics, representation should be included in the public art. So we hire these artists for their skill. We also hire them to dig as deep as they can into the community that uses that facility to understand how the public art could best represent the community that's using it. So then they represent a community vision and not their own.
So I thank you for that. And now I'm getting really into the weeds and the hairs, but I will say I'm splitting hairs because this is a massive project. We just did reallocate massive amounts of money. And part of what it was pitched for is as a regional amenity, and yet we're only, this is my district, so I'm going to support these artists, but it's just, it goes along the lines of, honestly, in my brain, this is equivalent to centralized registration. Like, if we're not keeping the common language around the way we're trying to sell an idea, right? So in theory, everyone's going to be using North Commons, not just North Side. That's what we sold to everybody. That's what we've sold to partners, that it's a citywide thing, right? So I support this. I totally get the timing. That's my bigger picture, just in general, that we would be consistent in what it is that we're saying on every single aspect of this, because in theory, if this is a project that is going to be a regional amenity, even though it's a neighborhood park, we should be looking for the entire what the entire city would want to be in this space. And so that's, I support art and artists in Northside. That's my bugaboo. Okay, I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Commissioner Alper.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to jump in after the two previous comments and say there's like absolutely no question that we should be supporting this wholeheartedly tonight. And while it was great to see the pictures, I think we opened up a kind of a can of worms about this. And 75,000 is super minimal for public art. It's super minimal in comparison to the overall project budget. Community engagement is very common with public art projects. So I just really hope that we pass this unanimously tonight and get these artists under contract. I think the plan makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and take a vote? All those in favor of approving Resolution 2024-160, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. And with that, I'll adjourn the Planning Committee.
I will reconvene then the full board and let the resolution pass out of committee if
Point of parliamentary inquiry. Since we didn't approve this item on the original agenda, do we need to do so at this point before we vote on it? We do. So we need to amend the agenda to include it. So I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of adding this item to the full agenda, since we weren't aware we were going to be bringing it to the full board. You have a question for Council Rice?
Yes, I have a question for Council Rice. It was on the.
do we have a second on?
I'll second that, but
Thank
I
you.
don't.
Okay.
I don't believe it
Commissioner
was on
Alpert?
the.
Yeah.
Sorry, do we even need to make a motion? I mean, I remember seeing it come through, I
Well,
thought.
it was not on the, as I recall, it was not on the agenda originally. The president announced it would be coming forward, but you formally need to amend your agenda. And it was,
I just don't want it to not be able to follow through.
Right, and
So
it's a
I'm sorry
contract
that
that
it
if
seems
somebody
like
were to
extra
cancel.
work, but we had approved the agenda before we were told that this item would be part of it. So I'm making a motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of adding this item to the full agenda.
Second.
Oh, thought that was already done. Okay, all those in favor of the
It's a roll call because it's suspending the rule.
Vice President Abeni?
I don't know what's happening because I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting.
So at the beginning of the meeting, we approved the agenda. After we approved the agenda, the president notified us that we may be bringing an item forward to the full board for approval that wasn't on the original agenda out of committee. So we did not know that that's what we would be considering tonight when we voted on the agenda. Thus, just to make sure that we're not going to have to come back and re-vote on this because it wasn't on the agenda properly, I am making a motion to suspend the rules. It's been seconded for the purpose of adding it to the agenda. And there's now a roll call vote that needs to occur for us to suspend the rules for that purpose.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz. Absent. Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Vice President Abeni.
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye.
You
Aye.
have 8 ayes, 1 absent.
I'd now like to make a motion to amend our agenda to include the item coming out of the Planning Committee, Resolution 2024-160.
160.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Now to move to the resolution.
Okay, from the Planning Committee, I would like to move Resolution 2024-160, a resolution approving design, installation, and maintenance agreements with Mia Jennings, Jenko Okok, Sade Pratt, and Brianna Williams for public art within the North Commons Park Improvements Project.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to petitions and communications. I'll start with Commissioner Alper. I'm sorry, I don't remember where we were last time.
Pass.
Commissioner Olson.
I just got back from Europe, Barcelona, and London. I don't have usually I like to comment on the parks and stuff there. I don't have a ton, except for just in London, they make you pay to use chairs, £4, and they also, everywhere they make you pay to use the bathroom, and I just really appreciate that we don't do that here. So that is the one observation I have off the top of my head, but it's a good trip.
Commissioner Rucker.
Pass.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. I just would like to apologize to my colleagues and to our staff for my abrupt departure from our meeting earlier this month. I had a family emergency that required my immediate attention, and so I was unable to stay with you for the whole meeting, and I apologize for that abrupt departure without any warning.
Commissioner Thompson.
Oh, I will just say, to clarify any confusion, I am very grateful that we are hiring Northside artists, and I just want to make a comment on that. I think it's really incredible. Once upon a time, NOMI, as it's North Minneapolis, right, was a burgeoning artistic community, and it's had some starts and stops, some theaters that have opened and closed, and public art, and I'm really grateful that we have taken the time to put some funding into that for our artists that live on the north side. So thank you.
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you. I've been riding my bike and running through and near Graco and just getting super excited about the Graco opening. It's going to be a great addition to the Northeast community. And also the Parkway getting worked on up in Northeast I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. Also, I think that one thing, for those of you who know me, I'm a baseball nut, but I've also started a baseball league that's running the parks at Northeast Park. And right now we're kind of registering and doing kids and, utilizing what we heard today, utilizing the park system and paying the park system for fees and those fields and that usage, that those are opportunities where our park system can really leverage opportunities for youth with other organizations. So I'm really excited about the centralized registration, because for my community and the communities that we're serving and what I hear from, it's going to be a big benefit, but it's also that we can utilize our spaces to leverage opportunities for youth, and it doesn't always have to come from our organizations. Coach Terry over at North Commons has been doing a good job. There's just a lot of places where we have so much power to have an impact on the families and the young people in Minneapolis. And I think that when I see things where we're moving in the right direction, it really just inspires me to keep going on. So thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes, as a member of the St. Anthony Falls Heritage Board, we had a recent presentation about the cutoff wall, which basically supports St. Anthony Falls. It's kind of the infrastructure that keeps it in place. It's about 60 feet tall, about 6 to 10 feet thick, and then spans the course of the river. So it's quite an amazing structure. But they received state funding this last section to really start some research on that, and they gave us an update. And last week, I think it was, or a week before, we hosted kind of a District 4 event at the lab, and it was very informational for everybody who attended. And it was really eye-opening, not only about the cutoff wall, but also about how much research is happening right on our doorstep. I mean, they're doing algal bloom research that's going to be published in about 1 to 2 years. And they also are looking at forever chemicals. I mean, the river basically comes through their building and has about 10 to 20 offshoots where they do various experiments. And so to be able to get in that space and to hear an update about, how important, the cutoff wall stuff is kind of on hold because of the high water. They haven't been able to gather as much research as they wanted to, at least at this point in time. But it's really exciting to see what they're doing and how important that little facility is right on our river. And I really was motivating to me that as an entity, we get in our little silos, but I really think we have a tremendous opportunity to really reach across jurisdictions, so to speak, and really leverage each other's knowledge base to a more deep level than what I currently feel. So it was a great turnout and great time.
Vice President Bennett.
The University of Minnesota Civil Engineering Program is in charge of that building, so I just want to say that. Okay, I've had a couple of, I'm going to do my outside boards because I wasn't here for that part. So there was an audit committee meeting on August 14th. The city auditor presented a review of the city's P-card program. And then there was also a resolution that was put forward by the president, Council President Payne to add a new item to the adopted audit plan, which will assess the Minneapolis Police Department's use of coaching. The specific question is, are there risks in continuing this practice? So when things move to coaching, they move outside of other kinds of formal processes of discipline or whatever. So it was added to the audit plan. The other item is I attended a BET meeting today, which is why I was late. That's the Board of Estimate and Taxation. There was a presentation and update from the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority on their levy update. They had received a dusted-off levy last year that's going to be continuing, it seems. So they're in the mix as well. They're in the mayor's 8.1 number. They received $5 million, and they're not escalating that at this time. But they're definitely working on a backlog, a significant backlog of deferred maintenance in our very large public housing portfolio in this city. The other thing that the Board of Estimate did today is we approved the issuance and sale of $128 million in bonds. And I'm just going to go a little, I'm learning about this, so I like information. There are three types of bonds. There are utility revenue bonds. That's actually the largest category of bonding, I think, overall at the city. There's also assessment bonds, so that's for streets and things like that, places where they know. So the first one is they know that the utilities will pay back the utility bonds. The rates will pay back. The assessment bonds, they know that the assessed properties will be paying those bonds back, and our trees fall into that category. And then there's the various purpose bonds, and those are repaid through the levy. Of the $128 million, about $85 million was in that third category of the various purpose bonds, the levy-based bonds. And of that $85 million, $17.5 million is going to parks. I'll also comment that the parks projects that are listed in the bond sale are specific. These dollars going to this specific project. I think there's one category of major maintenance items in the $3 million range. I think that's right. And I think that's good. It's again more transparency, consistency, transparency, all of these things that I think the park board's leading on in a lot of ways. And the city is just spending more categorically. So I'm sure that the departments know what they mean by Vision Zero, what they specifically are planning to do with the specifics of that, but to the public, it's just Vision Zero. So, and then the last thing is the debt service on the bonds we passed today, and all of the ones that are accumulated from past years that are still not paid off, result in about an average of a $32 million repayment on an annual basis that also comes from the levy. So I just thought that was interesting. And it's really different from our other part of the general fund levy request, but it's tied together because it impacts the general funds of our organizations. So, thanks.
Thank you for that report. Wow. Well, I don't have anything else, so I will declare the meeting adjourned almost at 8 o'clock, 8:07.